Cool. Hey, everyone. It is the 30th of March, 2023, and we are on UX Research Call number 17. Jakub's just joined us. Amazing. Uh, in this call, we are pretty much building out the UX Research Toolkit in public, and everyone who's building together with us is on this call, and I'm guessing a couple other people will jump in as well. Art. Art is the product manager of this call, of the toolkit, not of this call. But yeah, do you want to give maybe a little bit of an intro into the toolkit itself?
Good
Yeah,
morning.
feel free to go ahead.
Happy to. Yeah, let's hop in. So the toolkit is the brainchild of Mo and Christoph, who realized that there's something missing in the Bitcoin design community. They wanted to create an asset, a tool, something that enables founders, builders, designers to build better products. And what better way to do that than through equipping people with the tools, skills, mental models that us in UX research are, you know, fantastic at. And so it's been a journey since last year, 2022, to get here. At present, we are building out several pages for methodologies, including, let's say, um, rapid prototyping, the repository, usability testing that we've all agreed to previously. Agreed to meaning that we know that this would add value to the FOSS world. We've done research on it. We've heard from folks who are builders, founders, etc., in this space. And today we'll mm, simply continue to focus on this journey, what's been done so far. Back to you, Mo.
I love the introductions he gives. It's absolutely brilliant. So that's kind of that high level. Hey, Raj, thanks for joining. That's kind of that high level overview. This has become a little baby to me. I spend a lot of my time on it. Next to that, I work within the Bitcoin design community. So yeah, we're all building, we're going along. We try to keep these calls really fun as possible, relaxed. So, Art has prepared a bit of speaking about the design sprints, which I'm really curious, not the design sprints, the rapid prototyping. Jakub had some fun with generating some content for how to Bitcoin this and make it more Bitcoin and Lightning focused. And Paulo is going to speak about his repository template, which he's really kindly created for us. So yeah, Art, do you want to take us through, a little bit of the let's speak a little bit about the project stuff, and then we can dive into the fun stuff.
I think we can hop in straight away into individual methods, right?
Yeah, go for it.
So a okay, so a method that I took on writing about is rapid prototyping. Raj, it's good to have you here. And rapid prototyping is the poster child of innovation. It's the poster child of the creation of ideas, the validation of ideas. At it is a um, I heard something really cool in the conference yesterday that I went to called Advancing Research, which is this idea of shifting um, the work of research away from let's build a better thing towards let's not build shitty things. In other words, it's a risk mitigation strategy. It's a hedge against massive failure. Rapid prototyping is a perfect example of a methodology that allows you to um, stack successes very rapidly and trim the fats. So, how does rapid prototyping work? It's very simple. You take the smallest unit of an idea that you want to test, whatever that is. The unit of idea doesn't come from rapid prototyping. It comes from speaking with users. It comes from your product sense, your product intuition. It comes from waking up in the middle of the night from a dream. It's like it's an intervention. It's something that you notice, you think, you hypothesize will make a difference to the market, and you build that out as minimally as you can. Whether that's a sketch, whether that's a low fidelity prototype, maybe even like a higher fidelity prototype, but don't invest a lot of time into it. That's the most important thing. We don't want a functional prototype necessarily for this methodology. And then what you do is you put it in front of 5 humans. You run it through people. You ask open-ended questions. What are you noticing? What problems do you think this would solve for you? What do you like about it? What do you dislike? And you start to stack those insights about that experience. As you stack those insights, you're usually going to start to get to a, a good sense of like this is or is not meeting market demand at a rapid insights level. If it is, cool, let's hold that. If it isn't, cool, let's shift it and try another thing, right? So one model of rapid prototyping is you do something like this. It's like version one is you show them this box and you learn that, actually it's not the box that makes sense. It's the circle for this space or market or whatever. And so after you've spoken with 5 people, you've come to that insight. You're like, okay, let's shift the prototype into uh, this smallest minimum viable kind of change that would make sense. And then you build the circle and you put that in front of 5 people. You get their feedback and they're like, you know what, the circle is pretty cool, but we actually like a thicker line around the product. So then the version three is you put the version three in front of 5 people, right? And so every time you're moving through the sequence of events, you're increasing in certainty that you're moving in the right direction, and you're increasing in certainty that you're not moving in the wrong direction. Another way of doing it that I actually didn't put in here, and I don't even know how to necessarily express, is you could theoretically. Oh, that's what's. Oh, sorry, friends. You could. Whoop. You. Fuck me. You could theoretically um, show, let's say, 2 or 3 prototypes within V1, and you can say which one of these lands most. You could lands most, and or 4 or 5 or whatever, almost like an A/B test, but not intended to gather quantitative data, more intended to gather qualitative insights about what works and what doesn't, and then you can morph those into a V2. Does that make sense? So it's not necessarily showing one particular intervention. It could be showing, 3, 4 stimuli, and then pulling them together into a V2, show those that to 5 people, right? And then you're continuously, almost like rapidly, addressing hypotheses that you and your team might have, and getting insights at it. The intention, again, zooming out, is make uh, gather data quickly without investing too much time into things.
Art, I have a question. Is rapid prototyping also, do they use the word guerrilla testing interchangeably for rapid prototyping? Or is guerrilla testing something completely different?
It's
Because
completely different. Guerrilla testing is when you go outside and literally bump into people and ask them questions about their day-to-day life. So
mm,
guerrilla testing is like there's somebody at the grocery store and you're like, "Hey Karen, um, I'm doing some research. It's totally fine if you think I'm weird. I'm a little weird. Can you tell me a little bit more about what motivates you to come to this store versus another store?"
I think also like you can go out on the street and show prototype like to random people, and I think that's also correct. I mean,
so that's why they use the word guerrilla, because you're just going in there and you're just approaching people and being like, hey, test this out. Okay, all right,
yes,
all
like
right.
you don't really care much, or you don't focus much on representative. I guess it's not that important in that case. At least
Yep.
that's how I understand this.
Gorilla, it just in case people think we're saying the animal gorilla, we're not saying the animal gorilla. We're saying like the small unit of like people that are aligned about a cause, that form of gorilla.
Yeah.
It's a weird war metaphor. I don't necessarily love that phrase, but nonetheless. Raj, yes, of course this is a subset of agile. There's 2 different types of agile. There's small a agile, which is the philosophy of agile, That is to say, let us collectively adapt as quickly as possible to increase the rate to learning. Yeah, that's small a agile. Large a agile, or whatever, is we're going to run sprints with our burnups and our epochs, and our product owner is going to run the backlog using this, that methodology. Does that make sense? So
Yeah.
one is the philosophy, the philosophy that's set out in the manifesto, the Agile Manifesto, and the others are the operationalization of that uh, mental model, so to speak. Yeah.
That is some really good content. That is can literally be that is going to be content for the kid. Brilliant. That is brilliant. Thank you.
I have a question to Art. You wrote there, I think, um, that rapid testing involves interviews. So what do you consider doing rapid testing with unmoderated tests as well? Like that?
Yes.
Yeah, I guess.
Of course. Like use maze, for example, right? Like that's a simple example of testing a little. It's just like we're getting into this interesting space where, especially noobs, folks without much experience in user experience research, they're going to start to confuse the fact that you can use surveys, interviews, unmoderated surveys, let's say, or unmoderated usability tests with the method itself. So for
Mm,
that reason, I just use the word interviews here. Does that make sense? Because you could use surveys, you could use unmoderated usability tests, right?
yeah.
Um, yeah.
Does anyone have any questions for Art on this process? He's volunteered to write this piece for the toolkit, so I'm really happy he gave a presentation about it. It's not a methodology that I'm personally familiar with, so I'm learning more about it through him. But are there any questions, or shall we jump over to Paulo?
I can have a question, maybe. Um, Usually people don't really specify what kind of level of fidelity is needed for rapid prototyping. And some people can do it with low fidelity mockups, where you just have gray boxes and empty spaces and placeholders, and maybe made up content. And some on the other extreme of the spectrum is high fidelity prototypes that behave like the real thing, where the users that are testing it actually believe they're actually testing a real app and not a prototype. And I think that more and more it's getting easier and easier to get to this kind of extreme where the prototype is realistic enough that the user that is testing it thinks that they actually believe they're using an app. Um, and I mean, people could do it all over across the spectrum, depending on what you want to learn, right? But I've done a bunch of prototypes in my life, and I'm always keen to try to get as much realism as possible from the prototype because I really think that that influences the feedback from the people that are being interviewed. Because at the first moment when someone that is being interviewed and testing the prototype realizes, oh, this is actually not an input field, like the keyboard actually doesn't come up and I cannot actually write on it. Okay, oh, this is a prototype. Okay, so then I'm using it differently, right? If they keep believing that's a real thing, they will continue to use it as it is a real thing and will get much more richer and real feedback. So I think that the having some recommendations regarding the level of fidelity that we should target for rapid prototypes is a good thing because sometimes people get a bit sloppy, let's say, and go with a lower fidelity prototype, and they get feedback that is not really truthful because the subjects that are testing it are just like, oh, so this is a prototype, so I don't need to really actually test it like fully. So yeah, I think that's a interesting dimension that could be covered basically.
Paulo, on a call that we had, you actually shared with me a tool that you use to do prototyping testing. Are you cool? Which creates more of these sort of realistic prototypes. Are you happy to
Yeah.
share that with on the call as well? It's just it was I don't remember the name of the tool.
Yeah, it's framer.com.
Framer.com. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they now they're a bit different because they switch a little bit to the website building space, so you can create websites with it, not just prototypes. But they started out as a mobile interaction design tool
Yeah.
for mobile apps, where you could really do like design all the animations and transitions and so on, and you can have actual input fields that actually um, trigger the keyboard and people can type stuff into and so on. So with those kinds of prototyping tools, you can do much more realistic prototypes, and it's based on React technology. So the components that are shown in the prototype are actually React components, and then some organizations even use those components to go for production. And so you can even do prototypes, design prototypes with the real components for production that look the same as the real app, but it's not the real app, it's just a front end that doesn't save data, doesn't do anything, but for the user it looks like it is the real app. So that's the important part. So we get real feedback from them.
Thank you for sharing that. I never heard of Framer before. I was always making prototypes in Figma, but I'm curious to try it out. I've not ever made a prototype in Framer before, so it's handy to know. Thanks for joining us, Michelle. I've just seen your message in the Slack, and the call is being recorded. Yeah, she's just.
Hi, Mom. Hi, everybody. I just joined the Slack like yesterday. A friend sent me the link, so I will just follow along for the time I can be here, and then I'll catch up on the recording and also on the Slack as I learn more.
Yeah,
Nice to meet you all.
you're most welcome. And Timmy, thanks for joining as well. Paulo. Now, I'll give a little bit of introduction to Paulo, and then he can take over the floor. But he's, I'd love it if you could introduce yourself as well. But he very kindly, we had a call about 2 weeks ago, and he's this repository guy. He's not only a repository guy, but he created a template for us literally straight after the call that we had together, and it's a you can basically recreate that template in Notion and you can just use it yourself, and that's really kind of him. So I'm really glad and grateful that he's here on this call to share his thought process behind this template and share it with us, because we all can now pretty much use this template, and we'll also include it in the UX research toolkit if he's okay with that. So yeah, Paulo, please feel free to take over.
Okay. Thank you for the introduction. Thank you for inviting me. I was supposed to I was supposed to be on this call 2 weeks ago or something, but I was at the conference. Yeah, so I'm a designer, and I also do user research, and been doing that for too many years. Doesn't matter. Mostly on the Web2 space, and been interested in crypto since whatever 2016 or something, and I've been working full time in Web3 and DAOs and crypto since almost 2 years ago. And I was part of, and I'm part actually still of a DAO called RNDAO, and we were looking to do research about DAOs, and we are still looking to do research about DAOs. And at a particular point in time, we were thinking that there's this idea that we could maybe try to make user research as open source as possible, which is a very difficult thing to try to do because most organizations conduct research for their own advantage, right? Because they want to learn something about the market that they can take advantage of. So they maintain that knowledge private and closed. But we were like, well, what if we could do user research in the open, and everybody could benefit from everybody's research, right? And we started to think about, okay, there should be a repository to all that data, where user researchers from all different organizations could go there and upload data into that repository and also read what's there and benefit from it and extract their own insights on their own, right? And this kind of makes sense because current user research practices are, if you think about it from a macro perspective, are very wasteful, right? Like I have a research project. I want to learn about this problem specifically. I go out and I recruit the users that I want to talk to. I book interview sessions with them. I conduct each interview session with them. I get a script. I ask them questions. I record their questions. I then process each interview and extract insights from that, right? But I'm doing all of that just for the tiny sliver of reality that my research question is focused on, right? But I've had the time of the interview subject for 1 hour of that interview or whatever, where they talked about a bunch of stuff. But I'm only interested as a researcher. I'm only interested on the things that they talked about that answer my question, right? So all of the knowledge that that subject, that person shared on the interview gets probably lost forever because it's not really addressing the problem that I'm targeting right now as a researcher, right? So what if that interview, that transcript, that video, whatever, could be shared with everybody that's interested in knowing what that person thinks about all those things and the answers that they gave to my questions, right? So that came from that kind of insight. That came the idea that okay, we should have a repository that everybody can contribute to. And then we kind of got stuck in the question of okay, good research, good rich research data is full of proprietary information, sensitive information, confidential information, and so on, private information that the subjects in the interview sometimes share to the researcher, right? And we should be able to scrub that interview transcript out of sensitive data or personal identifiable information or private information that shouldn't be there exposed to the public, right? And so when we got to that point, we're like, okay, this is a bit more complicated than we think. And we were thinking about having this repository of data to do that, but then we got actual data and the data was too sensitive to put on the open, and so we didn't really figure it out. Either way, fast forward a few months, I was doing a research project for a company that I'm co-founding and creating with some other people. And I had to, I was booking sessions with people and doing research interviews with them and collecting that data and processing the data and all that. And I organized it in a Notion database, a series of Notion databases. And I was like, yeah, I think this is a structure that makes sense, and I kind of codified that structure in a way, and then I shared that with Mo on the call that we had, and because I don't want to share my own personal, secret, full sensitive data database, I created a clone of that Notion database structure so that everybody could go there, duplicate it, and use it on their own. So. Is everything that I said was a bit confusing? Maybe does anybody have questions about what I said? Okay. You can share you can see my screen. So okay, so cool. So this research repository is basically a collection of 5 Notion databases that are connected with each other. And so I kind of broke it down into humans, organizations, sessions, observations, and problems. And I'm going to go into each one of them to show you what it means. But basically, this is the summary of it. So we start by reaching out to humans that are involved in certain organizations. And then we try to book sessions with them where we talk to them and get super interesting observations that will hopefully lead us to some amazing problems that we're trying to solve and shape our products with. So there's these 5 database, the Notion databases. And by the way, all the data that you're seeing here is kind of dummy data, but it's mostly me and Mo trying it out as subjects. But on the humans database, you have the name of the human, the nickname if there's some, and for Web3 and crypto, that's kind of useful because most people, a lot of people use anon names. The main organization that they're attached to or that they're involved in, and in this case, if you click here, you go to the Notion database that is about organizations. Twitter link, Telegram, LinkedIn, public wallet if they have one. Some segment, and we can here try to segment humans into different categories if we want to, and it's useful later for us to filter them by. All the interview sessions that we had with them, so this actually links also to the sessions database where we have the notes for that session the number of sessions of each human being that we've done, and all the observations that have come from that those interviews with that human being. So if you go here to R&DAO, and we can go to the R&DAO page that is on the organizations database. And here you can see Spiral, R&DAO, the humans that are related to it, the type of organization, so we can also have tags for the organization, website, Twitter, Discord, and so on, and the description of the organization. So this is also kind of like a mini CRM for research, where we can have the human beings and the organizations that they're related to, and whenever we need to reach out to some organization because of some other thing, we can see which humans we have the contacts for. Then we have a database of sessions, and in this case, we just have like the name of the session, and the name of the session is kind of redundant. It's not really needed because all the data is here. So this is a session with the human Paulo on this date, and it was this type of session. So we can have several types of sessions, like usability testing or interview or whatever, and also the facilitator that was facilitating the session. And when we open the session page, we can have the notes for the session, and here the notes can be random notes that we type during the session, or the transcript of the call, or wherever we feel it's needed. In this case, I just typed some random notes. Something that I think I would say, which is research would be much better if it was all open source. Eventually, hopefully, let's try to do that maybe. And so what we do after we conduct these sessions is we have all the notes here, and then either the researcher or also people from other people from the team could come here and highlight what they think is important, and they just like do the normal Notion highlight, just to do a quick review of what they think is important about what this person said. And then in the session page for each session, we also have the table of observations, which basically means from each notes of each session, we can extract highlights and insights, and we can save them as separate observations in the observations table. And that's kind of where the magic starts to happen. So basically, in my session, I said that research would be much better if it was open source. And so I created this as an highlight, and I put this as an entry on the observation session, on the observation table, with a source URL, which links basically to this paragraph, that's what I just said in here, right? And I can, save the actual words that were said from the transcript, and I could title this observation as something like, like a headline of what it means, and what was the human, what was the session, what was the date, and so on and so forth. And then I can also tag each observation to a problem. So in here, I said that this observation was about the problem of openness of research. So when this is all said and done, and we have a bunch of data in here, we can go to the observations table that collects all observations from all humans that we've interviewed. And we can have, the raw data of it, the title of each observation, if that observation came from usability testing or was a verbal comment on the interview, so on and so forth, who said what at what date, and what are the problems that these observations are related to. And so if we do this a bunch of times with a bunch of data, we end up what is kind of useful for us, which is a list of problems. And in this case, we have two problems: the funding of research and the openness of research, backed by a bunch of observations each. In this case, we only have one observation for each, which is someone saying that there is a need to have more funding on research, and that research should be open source. And this was said by Mo, this was said by me. And we can end up with a list of problems that our interviewees said on the interviews, collected by how many times people said what through each observations. And basically, when we share this problem, we can share that people said this many times in this context, and we can drill down from funding of research is a problem because someone said that there's more funding needed, and you click on more funding, and you can see that it was said in this interview, and it was said in the context of this conversation on this script, right? And you can see what comes before that transcript and after that transcript, and why someone is saying that, right? So this is just a very roundabout way of trying to organize all research data that we can get in Notion, so that we can get to a final list of problems that we think are important from this research effort, and have that all backed up with individual observations from individual people that have said that in each interview, in each moment. And then after this, comes the normal, product management process of like, okay, we have these problems. How do we prioritize this? What are we going to do next? Why are we going to do that? What is the customer voice about certain things, so on and so forth. This template that I have, that I'm sharing here, is on this link, and I think I can share it here on the chat. And everybody can come here and duplicate these 5 databases, and put them on your own Notion page, Notion space, Notion team, whatever it's called, and connect them together and start to collect research insights and data in that way. And so that's kind of the structure that I followed. In the example of the app that I'm working with, which I shouldn't really show the live data, but we had the realization where, okay, it looks like a lot of people, like 75% of the 30 people that we talked to, are mentioning this specific problem. And we had no idea that that problem was so pervasive, right? But seeing it like this, we can see, oh, this problem has 70 observations said by 20 something people of the 30, right? And we're like, oh, everybody feels that this is a problem. And everybody says multiple times that this is a problem. And so we found out like a problem that we think is big enough and interesting enough and painful enough and relevant enough for most people that we talk to basically prioritize what we're going to do next. And of course, that we can only get to that realization if we have enough data and if we talk with enough people, obviously. But it's a cool way to basically justify the intuition that the user researcher usually has, right? Because if you are a user researcher and you talk with 30 people, after the 30th people, you already have a very good intuition of what are the problems that people are complaining for, right? But you cannot really like prove that that's the main problem, right? But if you document it like this and you have the database on Notion that shows this problem was talked about 70 times by 20 people out of the 30, and this is exactly what they said, and the second one was only talked about 5 times, so that's a big difference there, right? And then you have a clear prioritization criteria to follow. So that's it. Yeah.
Gonna do
So
another
good,
round
man.
of applause, but brilliant. I know Art is just as impressed, mind-boggled as I am. Jakub, I know I want to pull you into the conversation as well because you were working on your own repository for Get Alby, so you getting some really practically hands-on with this. So
Yeah, I'm just thinking how to incorporate. I love this. This is really nice. But the problem with Alby is we have a ton of user knowledge, which is not from interviews, but from a GitHub or Telegram or
Mhm.
like written
Feedback.
feedback. And I wonder how do you think this fits well for that kind of
Yeah.
insight? How
In
would
the product that I'm building, we have one of those feedback widgets on the website, right? Like people can click and give feedback, and we also integrate the feedback that comes from that in the same repository in the same thing. And it doesn't have a session because it's not right. Like people, we didn't schedule a session with a human being for them to tell us that. So we just put the date of the feedback submission. And it has a specific type of observation type, which is written feedback. So it's not something that someone says verbally on an interview. It's not a behavior on an usability testing session. It's something that people said written to us. And we put everything in there that comes from Telegram messages that someone sends us saying, "Oh, it would be cool to have this feature," or "I cannot figure this out," or whatever, from the feedback widgets on the website and so on. So we also integrated that kind of data on this kind of repository. We just tag it as written feedback instead of verbal feedback or behavior in usability testing.
That's great. So I think I'm gonna try to. I did it kind of manually. So I did like a list of also Notion, like a list of issues,
Right.
and I grouped them. Also like try to assess the let's say
Severity.
priority of this issue, but it was subjective for me. And I also like, which I think is nice, I added like to which part of the part, like we have basically two products, so
Yeah.
I add tags which product and also which part of the product. So for example, is it like transactional screens?
Yeah.
And then you can create like a board on Notion with where you can see problems divided by sections. So then, for example, if some contributor is designing wants to redesign this part of the app, they can see all of the problems listed in one place, so they can like take them all into account. So I think I'm gonna try to merge somehow your flow with this my idea and try to come up with something working.
And then
Yeah,
yeah,
that
go
makes
ahead,
sense.
Paulo.
I'm the researcher and designer of the product that I'm working on, and so after the problems database, I have a next features database, which basically fetches this problem, this problem, this problem. We're going to package it up in the next feature, and we define the feature, and then I do the designs for the feature, right? But I do the designs based on reading the actual raw evidence of the research data that says this is a problem because of this, and this is a problem because in this way, and so I design it according to that, right? So after what I've showed, I personally have for the design phase feature database that collects one or more problems, which collects one or more observations of those problems, so that I can inform the design that I'm doing based on the user feedback.
So
And so,
oh, sorry, no, go ahead. Wow.
yeah, that's it.
So this is the baseline database that you shared with us, and your version has an addition onto it, which you're saying is this feature database. So
Yeah.
then that's one step extra.
And also on the feature database, we have criteria for prioritization. And one of the criteria is the user research data. The other criteria are, well, we think it's strategically important to do this feature next more than the others, right? And we have like a score for 1 to 5 for each thing. And then the things that have the higher score are our next features. So we use this basically to influence roadmap and to decide roadmap. And I mean, the main motivation is basically not having the biggest voice in the room just say, no, let's just do what I say, and that's what we're going to do next, right? So either the CEO or the investors or the board or whatever usually want to have a say on what we will do next, right? And in this way, we can say, no. Hold on a bit. These are the criteria that we're using for prioritizing the next feature because it's backed by research, and here's the data, and you can see all that here. And don't give us shit about it. Basically,
level stuff. This is amazing. Art, you seem like you want to say something, and I've just been talking, but do you wanna jump in?
It's just brilliant, Paulo. Like you built a well-oiled machine. You built a tool that replaces Dovetail, that replaces what is the other one? Whatever. Like it replaces the current tools and gives the ability to build repositories back to the communities that most need it, which is free and open source. So I'm grateful for that. And
thank you.
The important thing is what Jakub said, which is how do we pull in data that doesn't fit into interviews and stuff? The fact that you addressed that is brilliant.
Yeah, thank you. I still am not happy that I had to do this in Notion, to be honest, because Notion is too closed. And if someone would set up this Notion databases in their own Notion team to give edit access to a bunch of people, they would have to pay seats on Notion and stuff like that. So it's not really good regarding that. But to my knowledge, there's no other easy to use database relation with the capability to have relations between database software that we could use for this. But I wish there would be that would be open source and free to use. And when that happens, I'll replicate the structure on that thing, and then we should be able to share the template. And the idea is that if we follow this structure, if I follow this structure for my research project, you follow the same structure for your research project, and so on, we could all eventually share the research data together and have it all in the same place and indexed in the same way and searchable in the same place and so on, so that people from all over the world can go there and see it. And I think that research that is backed by funding that is public goods funding should have as a requirement to be shared open source as soon as possible. And by as soon as possible, I mean like since the moment that someone says something out of their mouth, almost, right? And it is recorded in the call, and it is transcribed, and it is blah, 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 blah. Accounting for the sensibility of redacting data that is private and sensitive and should not be public. So if there would be something that would unite all of this and make all of this possible, I think the end goal is worth it, which is like we would have a repository of research data around crypto, Web3, and so on that anybody could use, and we will not be wasting research time on doing the same interviews all over again with the same people and not extracting enough data from that.
It makes so much of sense. It makes so much of sense. It would be a dream come true, you know? The UX designers, the teams could just jump into that big repository. You could call it a master brain or an external brain and get their insights, and it would be absolutely amazing. Yeah, if such a thing existed. Literally be amazing.
Yeah, I hope that eventually it exists, and I think we cannot we'll only be able to do it when there's an incentive model around this, in the sense that people that volunteer their time as interviewees would get paid for their time in the same way that usually in research interviews we give the Amazon voucher or whatever we used to do. So interviewees that are volunteering their time and their personal data should be rewarded.
Mhm.
Researchers that are coordinating all this should be rewarded. People that come from outside and look at the data and extract insights from that data should also be rewarded, so on and so forth. So there should be some incentive model around all this for it to work at like crypto scale.
Yeah.
And if that will eventually probably will figure it out, and then it will be what drives the growth of this, I guess.
Yeah.
I hope.
I'm going to hand it over to Art now in terms of, where we are. I'll do a quick screen share of what the kit looks like at the moment. And then Art, maybe you want to talk about the next steps or where we are with certain things. I'll do a little bit of a quick screen share now because I think, we spoke about the UX Research Toolkit, but it's currently being built in Notion. Oh, can everyone see my screen or is it super big at the moment?
Both.
Okay. Is this
It's
okay?
okay.
Is that okay?
Yep.
All right. So the toolkit at the moment, I'm definitely going to jazz up this cover because it looks a little bit too sad for my liking. So I'm going to, put some creativity into that. But at the moment, the toolkit's being built in Notion. So it's perfect that that repository, is also built in Notion. So at the moment, we reworked this homepage. I spent some time on it last week, drew this one up, and then I added these ones in, which are basically all of these subheadings of all of these questions. Now, the audience that we're dealing with, they are, we decided on this approach to what would be the question that the teams would be asking themselves. And so we came up with this list of questions. And as a result of these questions, we're then suggesting various tools. So for example, if a team would be asking themselves, are we building the right thing? We'd click into tools, and then they come up with competitive analysis, and then they come up with rapid prototyping. So basically, then they would jump in here, and then straight away, there's their tool. It's a step-by-step process. It's linking out to a Figma file, which they can use together as a team. And yeah, that's pretty much what the toolkit looks like right now. It's a whole bunch of these questions, and every question is linked out to tools. Now, some tools have already been, and methodologies have already been built out, and some of them haven't been built out yet. But yeah, I'll stop sharing and I'll hand it over to Art. Ooh, that's the project repository. Yeah.
That's brilliant, folks. I'm wondering, before we hop into next combos, who in the audience has anything to share, questions or concerns, frustrations, delights?
I have a question, but I missed a little bit, a little part of the presentation from Paulo because, internet problems. I'm just curious if you integrated something, Paulo, related to, for example, having different types of users different behavior archetypes or something like that?
Yeah, we do have a user segment that we have, and we tag each user on a segment, for example. And when we are looking at the problems, and we see that this problem was talked about by this many times on these observations by these many users, we also use the segment of what type of user that was, each one of those were, to try to figure out patterns of like, users of this segment usually report more this problem, and users of this other segment usually report more this other problem. And so that also informs. So, but answering your question, right now we're only having like a tag on each person, on each human being, from that specifies a segment. And segment could be something that's like B2C, B2B, or B2DAO, or whatever. It depends on your business positioning and how you segment that population. But it is also very useful for us to, when we're trying to prioritize what to do, what to solve next, what problem to solve next, to see what are the segments that are complaining more about those problems, to see, oh, actually, we were thinking about serving more this segment, and they're complaining about this problem, so that's more validation that we should go after this problem, because that's what the segment that we're targeting as main right now is complaining more about as well. So that's a very light way of doing it. We could go and do more, coming up with personas and attaching each persona to each human being, for example, that we talk to. I think that could be done. I am not really a fan of doing it, because I really don't like the idea of a real human being knowing which persona we are attaching him to eventually, because personas are buckets of prejudice sometimes, and it could be a bit too sensitive. And so that's why we use a more broad category of segments, and not a so micro category of persona to do that. But I guess people could also do it with personas if they want.
That's
Yeah, but
beautiful.
it was just this. Actually, just one thing before really quick, because this was something that was in my mind as well when I was reviewing the videos of like the previous meetings. That always, like when you talk in general terms about who are the users of this toolkit, I'm always like questioning. Okay, but what's the different mindset that these people have, because they want to solve the same problem, but they probably have different expectations of like how to do things, or like
Yeah, or different motivations, or different strategies, or different incentives, and so on. So I think that's a very I didn't want to put that on the framework, because I think that each person that adopts the framework should customize it to their own ways to do that. And it could be just a macro category of segment, or it could be just a more macro thing of persona, because I think it depends a lot on what you're trying to do. And I would recommend that for open source and crypto Web3 space, we refrain from segmenting people too finely, because that could end up being offensive in some way, and we should use more broader categories. But again, as a creator of a product, and then as a designer and researcher, you should know your users, right? Pretty well. And I think that comes mostly from spending time with them and talking to them, right? So that's where that should come from, not specific from a specific categorization mechanism.
Yeah, but I'm not advocating for personas per se, how they are known. It's like something in between. That's just
Yeah. Oh, I think we could do a whole thing about personas, because there's a bunch of there's a lot
Yeah,
of
one of
baggage.
the jobs to be done discussions is a very
Yeah.
delicate topic in this industry. Guys,
Yeah, exactly.
I have two kids to pick up, so I will have to jump at six, exactly 8 minutes on the dot, because otherwise I won't have two happy kids when I arrive. So yeah, I will have to jump at exactly.
When we hop into next steps, folks,
Yeah.
so let's take a look at our little Kanban. 1 second. Beep boop beep 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 beep. Cool. So we are literally just continuing to build out these assets here. right? So build them public. Christoph is working on Scrappy Research. This is, oh man, I feel so embarrassed having gone to Advancing Research yesterday that I forget the name of the person who wrote Just Enough Research. But it's that philosophy is let's not. Oh
Erica
man,
Hall.
Erica Hall.
Erica Hall, yeah. And there's a big spicy debate about this democratizing research conversation yesterday. But anyway, we're really just continuing on, right? In terms of the ops for the product as a whole, there are just section-based questions. Like each section needs to have the writer's name, things like that. Kudos. Jakub is working on this, what's uniquely Bitcoin to our UX research toolkit philosophy. And really, we're working at the speed of free and open source. So whatever that looks like for folks, my availability is opening up shortly. So I'll be able to likely hashtag agile. I think I can work on these story points within the next epoch. So yeah, that's where we're at, friends.
A question for Paulo, because I'm actually going to rewatch this video and I'm going to start to create some content because you gave a good introduction to the repository stuff. Would it feel good for you if I put that into a Google document and then create it as a bit of a write-up and then kind of share that with you and you can comment on it? Because you have this background of experience with the repository stuff, so I'd like to give that to you very much because it's your template as well that we would be including.
Yeah, I think I just solved that issue, which is the template is Creative Commons, so it's from everyone's now.
Yeah,
It's public domain. I don't need any authorship and recognition for it. I just hope people find it useful and use it.
right.
So don't worry about using it however you see fit, or creating content about it, or documenting it. If you're asking if I'll be available to document it on the knowledge base that there is now, yeah, maybe I could do an intro and so on, to be in line with the things that you just showed of the tools that are on the toolkit. Yeah, I could probably do that sometime. Yeah.
Amazing.
But I mean, nobody feel weird about using it or duplicating. Just go ahead and do it.
Amazing.
It's
Thank you.
It's public domain.
Thank you so much.
That's
Really.
beautiful. Thank you. Perfect, friends. Well, our next call, Mo's next task is to book our next call 2 weeks or so from now, right? Otherwise, yeah, onwards and upwards, and good luck with the kiddos. Letitia, you said that you'd be helping with writing this repository section, right?
Was it the design sprints, right?
The design sprints. That is to say,
Yeah.
I'll add you to the project so that you're able to tag yourself in those tasks.
Yeah, I actually entered GitHub today, so
Congratulations,
you can
that's
add
the
me
first.
Create a GitHub profile just to be included in the repository.
That's very special.
It's really sweet. It's really sweet.
That's cool.
Perfect.
Okay, I mean that seems like it's pretty much. Do we miss anything, Art?
Onwards and upwards.
I mean, I'll thank you guys for maybe a next call, a date that works good for everyone, and yeah, let's just keep on building.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Bye, friends. Good to meet you, Paulo. I'll reach out in socials.
All right. I'm gonna
Cool.
stop.
Nice to meet you as well. You have to stop recording.